All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this third Monday talk of Africa Code Week. It's Africa Code Week season, and this year it's all virtual. So we chose to celebrate with a weekly discussion, and we came up with this particular topic of climate change. And we wanted to know how coding and how Africa Code Week positioned itself with regards to protecting our environment and facing the major environment challenges that we are facing today. I'm very happy to have here my teammate and colleague, Brendan Smith, who's also an environmentalist from Ireland, and he is the author of the Africa Code Week material that we're using every year. And we're also updating them every year, so that thanks to you, Brendan. My name is Alice. I'm the social media manager, and I will be the host for this talk. I'm very happy to have you, Brendan, on this discussion. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Brendan Smith, and as you say, I'm a colleague of yours for many years, and I first got involved in Africa Code Week right at its inception back in mid-2015, and I've enjoyed all my time in Africa, and my time in Africa goes back quite a few years before that and is connected to technology. So in 1982, I had just finished university, and my first job was selling Apple computers, and I won the award for selling more Apple computers in Ireland that year than anybody else. And my award was a trip to Africa for myself and my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and that was to Morocco. So technology and me in Africa go back many, many decades, I am proud to say. And I also feel that when I'm in Africa, that there's something there that's spiritually connecting me, my soul, to the continent, particularly Botswana. I have a beautiful love of Botswana. And recently I've been reading about scientific evidence that the human race, as we know it, started in the salt lakes of northern Botswana. So I knew that it was in my DNA being African, even though I live in Ireland on the very west coast of Europe.
So that was quite a great surprise and a great joy for you to be on Africa Code Week.
Yes.
To begin with.
It was a spiritual reawakening and a technology awareness.
Wow.
And to realize that, like, I'm a trained teacher by profession. I work at the university in Galway as an education science, public engagement outreach officer. And I look at education, and what is education? Education is about preparing us for the future, giving us the skill sets and the knowledge and the wisdom to not only survive, but hopefully to flourish and to be part of a greater community within our own countries and globally as well. So that's what education is fundamentally about. And coding is very much part of that. It's giving young people, and every one of us, not just young people, but primarily young people, a skill set to survive and flourish in the 21st century, because technology is what we're living in. We're living in an era of smart technologies, the connected world. And coding is upskilling the youth of Africa to be the hub of change for the rest of the world. It's the youngest continent in the world. And I've such a love of the young people of Africa, people generally, but particularly in Africa, those young people, taken like fish to water, the ability to learn coding and to make a difference, you know. And part of coding, of course, is science. And what is science? Science is about understanding how the universe works, the actual universal laws behind events and activities and so forth. And we're now living in a time of climate change. I wouldn't even call it climate change. It's really climate chaos. And the whole world at the moment is suffering from the pandemic known as COVID-19. And that is basically due to our abuse of nature. And we're not separate from nature. We've been on this planet 200,000 years. And it's only in the last few hundred years, and particularly in Africa, my own country of Ireland, that we become urbanized. And when we become urbanized, we're disconnecting ourselves from the rest of nature. And when you're not part of it every day, you kind of treat it as something separate. So we have to bring the green and blue, the waterways and the green landscapes back into cities. So the cities of the future have to be smart with technology, but they also have to be green. There's no, I mean, if you have, and I'm looking at the building behind you, lovely that it is, Alice, of Paris, but it's a flat roof. Yeah. Why isn't there a garden at the top that will, planting trees and planting vegetables and fruits and herbs will actually control the temperature, lower the temperature in the city. That's why a lot of cities today are bringing in trees along by their roadways as well. So we have to realize that science is showing us the importance of what we're doing at the moment to the planet, and we have to undo those things, be it biodiversity loss, be it pandemic, be it climate chaos. And coding is a medium for young people to become aware of that.
Okay, yeah, because it goes without saying that coding and tech need to be conceived now in alignment with the climate chaos that we're living. How do we integrate this progress of technology into the reality of the world that we live in and where we are evolving as a species?
Yes, and you're right. How do we bring it to technology into the classroom? Okay, the medium at the moment for and will increasingly will be online activities. So in my own country now, the schools closed in March and are only open at a much reduced level, shall we say, likewise with third level. So online learning became the only way we could actually connect, you know. So it's just that's good in some ways. Technology had allowed you and me now and Africa to be together more or less in the same virtual room. Fantastic. So we can share resources, share knowledge. We're living in the global classroom itself. But what we have to do is we have to ensure that we're connected with the great outdoors, with the real worlds, because we just briefly talked to before we went live is the mental health issues that can arise when you're confined to an actual space itself, you know. So what we say to young people, use coding, use science, and all science is local. But the themes are actually outside the door. So if you live in a forested area, it could be forest, that could be your theme. If you live in a desert area, likewise, if you live in a seashore. So you use local themes, and all the laws of nature impact on all different types of habitats and environments. If you live in a built up city, there's no reason why we can't have gardening and so on and so forth. So the important thing is to get the balance right between the online learning and the real activity that takes place outside. So if we're doing something, for instance, about trees, and one of my projects is called, and these are all available on the Africa Code Week website. One of them is why trees are important. I mean, basically, without trees, we wouldn't have life. We wouldn't have the human species because they take in all the greenhouse emissions, primarily, or most of them, carbon dioxide, but it gives us the oxygen that gives us life, you know. So that's true, important. But there are other things about trees, like the biggest, most popular, well-known tree in Ireland is the oak tree. It supports 450 different species of wildlife. It's a universe. So it's to release that as teachers, that knowledge to what those trees are as sources of actual life itself. And as I tell my own students, you know what you can do is you want to progress in life, be like a tree. Trees, the biggest problem that we have in the world at the moment, linked to climate change, is something called waste. Nature, the rest of nature doesn't have waste. Waste is considered a resource. And trees don't, what's broken down, a dead tree doesn't lead to more trees, but its nutrients are the building blocks for other forms of life as well, you know. So waste is something that is a victim, is part of the consumer society. And technology should help us to ensure that the phone that I have in my hand is not just looked on, it's a year or 2 years old, should be thrown out. It's a mine of rare metals. It's a mine for gold, and we have to start harvesting them. So that's critical to realize that technology is the solution, or one of the solutions towards making a better world, but there are problems with it, and we have to understand that. So within a classroom, if we want to capture the imagination of young people, if we talk about serious issues like pandemics, climate change, and so on, yeah, absolutely, we have to teach them that. We have to give them what's happening today and tomorrow, and to come up with solutions. They're going to come up with solutions. They are the new generation. But we have to do it for young people in such a way that captures their imagination, and that is through games. Children have always loved games and always will. So the game environment allows them to do that. So if I give a lecture on trees, I could bore people to tears, like, but if for young people, and likewise for young people, but if I showed them how to draw a tree, how to make the tree animated, how to change its color, interact with other sprites or little avatars on it, that's the whole difference. And when you give them the opportunity to draw the tree, to draw the animals, that's the way to do it. So coding, Scratch in particular, allows you to combine all the skill sets within the school. So when we say to teachers, look, some teachers say to me, Brendan, we can't take in coding. We have a really busy schedule as we have at the moment, doing languages, maths and science. And I says, yeah, do them. Coding is just an add-on. It gives you a new medium to do that. It allows you to do everything that you're doing, but in a fun way that can capture the imagination of youth. And that's what Scratch allows you to do. And
this is exactly, yeah, this is exactly what Africa Code Week is about. It's finding ways to interact with the youth in using their codes and their language.
Yes.
And using games is a very good way to do so. The latest 2020 Africa Code Week teaching guide is called Scratch in the Classroom, like you said, and this is where you can find the Why Are the Trees Important lesson, which is a project, and it's really great. I had a lot of fun watching this one when you did the demo. Yes. The other day. But I saw on the website there's another eco project that you worked on, and it's available on the Scratch website as well. Absolutely. And it's called Save Our Seas.
Yes. Great. Yes. And I also have other ones like quizzes. So it's interactive, and the game is interactive. The trees is interactive to a certain degree. And there's one also about coaching, and interaction is the key. So I can give an overview and then probably spend a little bit more time on one of them. How about that, Alice?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. You want to share a screen?
If there's any questions, just stop me as I'm doing it. So
yeah, absolutely. This is an interactive session. So if you want to ask any questions, wow.
Okay, so here we have Save Our Seas. So this is the code, and this is the screen. So I'm just going to move that out of the way now for a moment. So you have your full screen, and I can actually get the game started now. So I go to the green flag. Now the little characters here, I'm sure the coders will be familiar with them that teach Scratch. They are in a library, a repository of what we call character sprites, or what is often called avatars, the animated characters. If you're using these sprites, make sure you give the opportunity for your young people in the classroom to draw at least one or two rather than just use the library. The library is a start, it's not an end in itself. So when you're telling something about nature or about saving our seas, or SOS for short, so here we have a little story coming from one of the avatars who gives his name or her name. I need your help to save me and others. So
I like how the fish talk. This is fun.
Yeah, so the talking, now you could do an audio, as you know, Alice, and the teachers that use Scratch, you can bring in sound, but I would recommend you not to bring sound until the project is done, because once you get students or young people, understandably, to record their own voice, that takes over and everything is pushed aside. So I always let it to be text first before you bring in audio as an add-on element, you know. So here are some facts.
So Brandon, is it true that by 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean?
This is the worry. So we used to say, once upon a time, we used to bring fish home in a bag, a plastic bag, and now we bring the plastic bag inside the fish, which is very,
oh my God, yeah.
So that's scary. So 90% of seabirds globally have plastic within them. And don't forget that some of that plastic is toxic. That will end up in our systems. And there are scientific studies showing that it's impacting on fertility, for instance.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So that means that populations whose diet is essentially based on sea products, I would say fish, seafood or whatever, would get eventually diseases and stuff. Wow.
Absolutely. And this is the fundamental thing. What we throw into the sea, there's no such thing as throw away. Away where? It all comes back to haunt us, you know? And we live in a world where everything is interconnected. So if you throw it into the ocean, it may come back in the form of food that you have on your plate or somebody else.
Even sushi.
Exactly. So we have to
Especially
be
sushi.
careful. And remember, plastic was originally invented, believe it or not, to save the African elephant. It's the biggest, one of the most destructive forces at the world at the moment. Sorry for digressing, but originally what was happening in the 19th century, a very popular game in 19th century America was billiards and pool, and they were using billiard balls, and they were made from ivory. So there was a huge devastation of the African herds of elephants. So and the American company, the biggest manufacturer of billiard balls in America, came up with an award, which was quite huge for its time, for coming up with an alternative man-made solution material to take over from elephant ivory. And that was plastic. So it actually came up for the right reason. So sorry, now I digress there. So say so I asked there, you have to click. So there's an interaction. You are now the diver trying to save the sea life here from being killed by the.
So the trash is the blue dots that we see, or is it something?
No, this is okay. Now these are all coming, you see. And notice, even though the diver is going so fast, he can't get everything. He's trying his best, but he's just not fast enough. And this is the problem. We are just covering the oceans with rubbish, and there's too much for any of us to actually to properly and easily and quickly.
But there's no fish now.
Exactly. It's all gone. So if you look at the Pacific Ocean, say if I'm having a can of Coke on the west coast of America, and I throw the can away, the wind blows it into the water. I'm in China doing a can of some type of mineral. I throw it in the water. That with the currents can end up in the center of the North Pacific. There are areas of the Pacific larger than the state of Texas. There's these huge areas that are just covered with plastic, slightly below the water level, the surface.
Is that what they call the plastic continent or something, and it's drifting somehow? Oh wow!
They're called this plastic trash, and there's different names for it. But it's all building up because plastic was made to last. It may be broken up, but it's still there. It can last hundreds and hundreds of years, and it will take us a long time to get rid of it all, you know. But the poor old, this was us trying our little bit to make a difference, and on our own, we just can't stop the trash. Well, two things there, Alice, is one is you stop making the trash, and secondly, you work with others. And sometimes people say, well, what can I do on my own? I'm only a little grain of sand on the beach. But without grains of sand, there is no beach. So collectively, can make a difference, you know? So that's one. Yeah. So now look, you see how it was. It was a game, but there was a story. Now I could have started that, Alice, as follows. I'll do that once more. And just to show you how you could develop that game or not, as the case may be. So I'm going to look into my code. So here's the code behind it. And the most important one is the storyteller, which happens to be the fish. Now, see all that? So there's all research there. There's maybe 5 trillion pieces of plastic already floating around in the seas itself. 90% of birds have it within them. So that's when you're doing a story using a game on Scratch, what you have to do first is do the research. So this is where your students start researching the topic. It could be about pollution in the seas. It could be about deforestation. It could be about pollution in your waters, in your city. The important thing is not to do it all on computer. Get outside, do something real. Gather the research, and then you develop the story. So we always say to people, for instance, if you're doing this project about saving our seas, do a real cleanup as part of your community along your seashore or along your river. If you're doing a Scratch project that I'll show shortly about trees, do real planting of trees once you know the importance of it. So it's the importance that what you learn in the classroom with coding, you do in the real world. And likewise, what you do in the real world, you can bring into coding and you bring the game. I could have made that game quite short. I could have pulled all of this scientific information, shall we say. So I could have withdrawn it all together and I could have made it a lot shorter. So here I just say, hello, my name is, now will you stop the rubbish? just click on the starfish. So if we do it now, it's very much shorter. And it
I
becomes
see.
almost just a straight game, everybody. But why am I doing it? Am I just doing it for the game without the scientific analysis and the reasons behind it? So we have to ensure that at the beginning of your game, you give some scientific facts, or at the end or during it. So that's the reason why that, and that just, I didn't just invent all of that information that's there. That came from somewhere. That came from research. So get your students to do research. If they're looking at, say, trees, do a question and answer with them, why trees are important. If you're doing it about pollution, why, if something throws in the river, what is the impact on me ultimately? Yeah, so that's where the research, it comes into place. And the
This is interesting.
Sorry, Alice.
This is interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because then the students get to actually find out by themselves the impact of plastic pollution, and in such a way that they are aware as they code the game that it's a problem that cannot be solved just by collecting it from the water. It needs to be stopped earlier in the process of producing these plastic items. What are 5, how can we like not repurpose, but like change something in the game to make them understand that there needs to be some sort of, you know, awareness to be raised, you know, on the use of non-reusable items, plastic items.
Remember, the content that I presently have that is here in the center, it's up to you as a teacher and as a mentor to do the research with them. Those are the words that I came up with one class in Ireland. But in all honesty, that could be done by anybody. So basically, a game is only the end result of your own research and your students' research. The fish will talk whatever you want it to talk. And that's why all science is local and real. And if you're studying climate change, don't just talk about something 10,000 miles away from you. Bring it back to your own place. So I'm on the west coast of Ireland. Over the last 5-10 years, we've had a huge amount of storms that we have never experienced before, certainly in my lifetime. There's a new phenomena. So we relate to the problems of that climate change or global warming isn't just about the world getting warmer. It's the weather is becoming unstable. So I can see that with my own eyes. My students can see it with their own eyes. So this is the important thing. All science is local. All climate change activity has an impact on every one of us, no matter where we are. So a big subject like climate change, they can feel out of touch with. But if they're talking about, say, the water levels lowering in the reservoirs and the lakes, that probably is due to climate change. There's actually locust plague in East Africa. That's because of climate change. To relate it to the science, this is the important thing. Now,
I'm seeing a few comments. Sorry, Brendan. I'm just seeing a few comments on Facebook. Love how you guys are putting young people at the forefront of developing solutions today. This is a great conversation. Thank you. This is a great one. This session will be available on the Africa Code Week YouTube channel and on the Facebook page as well for people who'd like to watch and share the replay. Just reminding the audience that this is an interactive session. If you have any questions, just feel free to either raise your hand or post your questions on the chat. Brendan, what were you going to say?
Yes, can you see my new screen now?
Absolutely. Wow, the wildlife quiz. I love this one. This is a great one too.
Now look at it. The code is very simple. Now these are the building blocks. When I use a smartphone, I see the end result of the coding. So the coding is the technical language that makes that smart device work. It ain't smart if it doesn't have code. So there's lots of characters behind it, and they're the little codes. But to go to a full screen, so this is quite a simple quiz. It could be for any subject, but in this case, obviously, it's environmental. So I click here to start it going. Oh, sorry. I just have a stop there for some reason. So bear with me 1 second.
Yeah, sure.
If it goes wrong, it will go wrong. So I'll just see what the problem is there now. I'll come back to that in a second now.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'll actually come back to that. So bear with me one second. I may have inadvertently changed some of the code. So what I'll do now is I will go to, let me see now, trees, why trees are important. Yeah.
Why trees are important, I felt it was a great lesson because it's quite a long one to put together, but once you've understood the process, then you can actually change the elements to adapt the format of the game. And
yeah, go on. Yes.
And I think it was interesting to see the chain of consequences if trees went missing somehow, and then eventually, surprise, no humans anymore. But
absolutely, everything is interrelated, and this is the important thing. So I'll go back into that again. Sorry, I just had a freeze up for some reason. Sometimes technology can let you down the most inappropriate times. So
I remember something that she said a couple of years ago on a different project, and it was something like, we are made of the universe. Like we're not disconnected from the universe. We are the universe. The universe is within us, and we are everything is interconnected, interrelated, and everyone can just witness the changes around them in their environment. When you go, you take like when you commute to work on the same road every day for years and years, and you start noticing that some of the trees are missing and they've been replaced by something in concrete, for example, or that park that you used to go to when you were a kid is no longer a park. It's I don't know, a building or a road or anything. And I myself see a lot of stuff. Like I see the changes in the water levels. I see, like, every year the hot season is even hotter and it lasts longer. It goes until December, whereas in December we used to have the first rains because we have rainy Christmas here in Amazonia.
But person as young as you can actually see the changes that are actually happening in the world.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and the references, as I say, we're not separate from nature, we're part of nature, and we are the children of the stars. We are.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah,
I remember. I love that one.
We have the same, molecular structure as the rocks on the moon and on Mars.
Yeah.
Everything in the universe is interconnected. We're part of the great universe, as well as part of the world, as well as part of nature. So it's important to be aware of that.
Yes,
so,
yes.
Here's our avatar talking about the importance of trees. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So what's happening here is the animals.
I don't think I can see your screen, Brendan.
Oh, sorry, my fault. I do apologize. So I'll stop it there now. Just bear with me 1 second. I was enjoying that on my own. So here we go. So I'll start again there now.
Oh, wow.
So this is it, why trees are important. So you click here to find out. So it's interactive. The important thing is don't just have it as a lecture. Interaction is key. So this would be more a kind of a talk, but remember what is coming out of the words of the animals, the birds, the main character has always been inputted by the young people that are actually developing this. So we talk about how the trees are important to wildlife, but to ourselves as well.
Mm.
And notice there's a river and lake down here. Those elements are drawn in. So the artistic element is critical. The sun, likewise, is drawn in. So you can use it. So the animals are kind of happy. They're getting their food from the trees, particularly the monkeys. So many plants that we use. In fact, most of the major medicines we use today actually have come from plant life.
I like the sick boy.
So little boy is sick and his mom is helping him out.
He doesn't look like his mother, but then again, you never know.
Yeah.
Genetics.
Yeah, and remember, you can draw and do those characters whatever way you want, So this is about the what is in the air, the oxygen and the CO2 and the role of trees. So we looked at the wildlife.
Brandon, at what age can a student start working on a project like this?
Being honest about it, some of my students are 7 years of age. So there's different levels of coding. You could do very basic stuff. Hello, my name is, with a certain amount of interaction with two characters touching and then something happens. And you can get more complicated. You have kind of different scenes. So for a very young child, you would start, maybe have only one background and maybe have only one moving characters, and they will build up awareness. The great thing about children is their imagination is so open. They will see something and see 1,000 stories in that something, or 1,000 worlds. So it's the older people like myself that have to rediscover that creativity and imagination that is a natural thing to younger people.
Oh, that's true. When my nephew found out about Scratch, he started right away making dinosaurs spin around.
Yeah.
And there was a whole story behind that.
Yes. Well, that's good. I mean, you expose them, they just take to it, like, as I say, fish to water. So you saw the introduction to that, to the audience and to Alice. It was the good story of nature. And then what happens when we started to abuse nature, the impact. And as you say, Alice, it ends when all of the characters, the elephant is crying now, the big fauna disappear, and then the amphibians disappear, and then the birds disappear, and the fish disappear. And ultimately what is only left then is the actual landscape. Even the humans will disappear back. So it is important to do it. Now, this project, you cannot do it in 40 minutes. It's a series of steps. You have to do different scenes. It's a storybook. You don't write a whole novel in a 40-minute class, or even in 2 or 3. It takes time. You have to always do your coding on a storybook. What is the beginning? What is the middle? What is the end? What is the purpose? This type of thing. You know? And there you have a complete story of the tree, the importance of it, and the impact that we're having on the actual trees itself, right through to the end, which is coming soon. And I'm sorry to say this one has a sad ending, but you can add whatever ending you want. You can talk about how technology can help us, how we can overcome the problems that is happening, you know. So with the chopping down of the trees, fruit trees, so good.
This is great.
Yeah, and then everything disappears, including the story.
Okay, we have a question. I think we have a question from the audience. Oh, Vida. Vida attended the Women Empowerment Workshop. She was the Ghana representative last year in Rabat. I will allow her to unmute herself. I think you can unmute yourself, Vida, now.
And I'll stop that now.
And I'm hello, Alice. Thank you.
Hi, Vida.
Hi, Alice. Trust you are good.
Yeah, how are you?
Thank you for the opportunity. But I just wanted to say that we can't see the screen. And Brandon's video seems to be breaking. It makes it difficult for us to concentrate, please. So if you can share the screen.
Oh, really?
Thank you.
Well, yes. I will share the recording with you afterwards.
Okay, we'll appreciate it. Thank you.
So you can see okay, Alice, but some of our people cannot see. Is that the case?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
I can, I can, but don't worry. I think it will be recorded. And
yeah, and I'm glad that was interesting. So technology it is made by ourselves. So it's always improving. And I'm sorry to hear that there was issues of connectivity. And I'm glad to hear that the first voices were female that were coming through, because sadly, sometimes a lot of the computer games can be quite misogynistic. Women are portrayed as caricature, a collection of body parts. So very much the whole of female emancipation, empowerment has to be in the games themselves. So two themes like the violence, we have to exclude that. Too many of the games are violent. The misogynistic attitude has to be excluded. So I always try to put people of all races, of all diverse cultures, of both sexes to the forefront, you know, and this is critical, you know, and it's great to hear that our first comments came from female coders. Yeah.
And Vida is a great one. She's one of the greatest trainers in Ghana for Africa Code Week. So I'm very glad that she was allowed to talk today. So the recording will be shared, obviously, for the people who couldn't watch properly, who had connection issues. Thank you so much, Brendan, for your time and for your knowledge. This is, I think, a great conversation to have. And exactly, well, coding is, it's a tool, right? So we can use it to raise as many issues as we want, be it gender-based violence, gender biases, climate chaos, anything that feels important for a teacher to pass on in terms of values and knowledge.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we can definitely use that. The Africa Code Week material was gender-proofed by UNESCO. So we're using a lot of female references. We're putting a lot of female characters on stage, right? On the projects that we're using. I think it's very important to change the mentalities and try to instill some of the most positive values that we can to the youth, and so they can become, responsible adults and tech savvy individuals.
Yes.
The wildlife quiz is back on. You have another 5 minutes, Brendan, if you want.
Yeah, so basically a quiz is very good. There's a high level of interaction. So it's about developing the actual questions themselves, and not just having a straight yes and no answer, but to allow interaction. So for instance, we might have the elephant. So you, as the game says, click on an elephant to find out some interesting facts about it and take part in our quiz. So you click on it and there's a number of options. So you always, when you're doing a quiz, to allow interaction, the more, give it a certain amount of options. So are the world's largest animals, land animals, best sense of smell of any, and so forth. So they're the facts. So you then says click an arrow to go to the quiz, and then you go to the quiz. And then they use their tusks to dig for ants, vegetables, and water, So this is very good science that the young people are putting together. And remember, when you're doing games like this, do it with the young people. They have then created them, they're empowered them to actually research it. They have to understand the science. They have to study, in this case, animals. In the other case, it was marine. The one in between was about trees. So any of the projects, be it a quiz, be it a story, be it a game, the research is critical in advance to make it worthwhile. And so one class would have developed this game. Then that game was used by all the different classes in the school. So they have become teachers, and it's something they're familiar with. Yeah, so there you go. So
and this is the point of Africa Code Week, to empower the youth, right? So we want them to be at the center of the learning process. They need to be at the start, at the middle, at the end of the learning process. It's all about them and how they acquire knowledge. It's not that we don't want them to think pre-thought, ideas. We want them to be creative. They will be creating the solutions for the future. So we might as well start as soon as we can, right? And the competition that is actually underway in Africa, throughout the entire continent, in fact, they have to respond to a theme that was deliberately vague in order for them to come up with ideas and solutions to how will your tech change the future of education? It can be about anything. So we really look forward to seeing what they will come up with at the end of November, and then we will gladly share our top 3 once we have it. This competition is a major Africa Code Week event this year. So yeah, this is all about Scratch, all about coding. Next week, we will have another Monday talk about positive education and how we can build self-confidence in the youth. So this is again another topic for teachers. I will have with me youth activist Mirabel Mora from Nigeria. And we will have 5 life hacks for teachers who want to inspire their students to become more confident and more sure of themselves. So thank you so much, Brendan, for this one. This was a very good one. I hope you enjoyed this session as much as I did. And I will end this conversation now, wishing you a lovely week. And bye-bye for now.